Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Yilun Jin from the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. It is my great honor to introduce our work collaborating with Peking University about graph structural topic neural network. First of all, I would like to wish you all the best to all those who are watching this video. I would like to wish you all the best, especially at this era that is negatively influenced by COVID-19. So let's get started and wish you all the best. I would like to introduce our work from four perspectives. I will first introduce the background and motivation that drive us to the work. And then I will introduce a little bit details about our model, which is called GraphSTONE. And then I will introduce a little bit about our experimental results. And then I will provide a brief summary about the work. Well, first of all, before we introduce GCNs, we would like to talk about networks. Networks are powerful data structures that encode relationships between objects. In many cases, we are interested not only in the objects themselves, but also the relationship between them. For example, in social networks, if I would like to know about you, I would tend to look your followers, your friends, etc. And also in biology networks, it is important to understand whether a molecule interacts with another molecule, etc. Right? But the property of networks makes it very hard to apply machine learning techniques upon networks because networks are irregular, high dimensional, and sparse. By irregular, I mean that the node degrees vary significantly in networks. Some of you may know the power law degree distribution, and that illustrates how uneven the degrees of nodes are. And networks are generally very large. For example, a typical social network may be millions or even billions of nodes. And in general, a node can only connect to very few nodes compared to the total number of nodes. For example, our Facebook maybe generally have only several hundreds of friends, which is a very small proportion. And therefore, these difficulties cause for the need of more powerful learning tools that enable machine learning on networks. And therefore, we would like to hope that we can somehow project nodes or network itself to vectors according to node features or network structures or both, because vectors are something that we like, that we are familiar with, right? We can apply multiple machine learning algorithms. And this is called network representation learning, which is a general concept that incorporates GCNs. And now let's talk about GCNs. So what are GCNs? Basically, GCNs mimic the process of information passage, that in each graph convolution, a node gets information from all its neighboring nodes, and then it aggregates all the information, which forms the representation for the next layer. And therefore, graph convolutional networks basically fuse node features with the help of network structures, because they aggregate information using edges, and that is network structures, right? And speaking about applications, definitely it has very wide applications. For example, it can enable node classification, link prediction, recommendation, and I even know some applications that use GCNs to do semantic segmentation on point clouds, which is rather cool, right? And there are also many industrial corporations that use GCNs in very large scale. For example, Pinterest and Alibaba all use graph neural networks for their recommendation. And for researchers, we would have a very important question: when do GCNs perform bad? And speaking about this question, Professor Peng Cui from Tsinghua University did an experiment last year. He built a graph using 10 blocks with stochastic block models and assigned them with random node features. And the result is somehow surprising, that with random node features, GCNs basically does not perform any better than random guessing. And therefore, it tells us a story that when node features are irrelevant towards networks and network structures are more important, GCNs can barely perform better than random. And therefore, we conclude that it is GCN's drawback that they are less capable of expressing structures of networks. And so here comes a natural question. If we want to complement GCNs to let them incorporate structures, what structures would we like to incorporate? Well, when we browse the literature, we find that high-order structural patterns like network motifs and graphlets, which basically are the figures that's shown on the right, they are structural patterns consisting of multiple nodes and form specific connectivity. They are very useful in multiple data mining tasks, such as biological network mining, etc. And speaking about high-order structural patterns, a natural way is to consider very deep graph convolutional networks. Well, it is possible to use them, but even using very deep GCNs, we are unable to exactly or adequately represent these structures like the reference shown here. And there are also alternatives. Can we design new GCNs that incorporately takes inputs about these structures and adequately represents them? Yes, there are existing works about them. However, in several works, all possible network structures are selected for aggregation, which definitely will lead to very poor efficiency because networks are complex, right? And in other cases, the authors only select a few network motifs for attention, which we conclude is insufficient. Why? So let's introduce an example, an observation that drives us to this work. In this figure, we show several social relations like employees, families, and followers. Employees generally form hierarchies and therefore form trees. Family members generally form dense clusters, and social followers generally do not know each other well and may form star-like shapes. And then we show two social networks. One is from a manager and the other from a professor. Well, we can see that definitely both of them contain all three types of relations. But a manager usually leads a larger team, which means that tree structures will be more dominant in his social network. And a professor is generally more influential and therefore would have more followers. And hence, star-like structures will appear more in Professor Y's social network. And therefore, we can see that all these types of structures exist in both networks. And if we only select a few motifs, it is likely that we select identical motifs, which cannot show the difference between them. And the difference is distributional difference of structures, which we will adequately express later. And therefore, the research goal of our paper is to design a novel GCN framework that adequately describes and expresses the structural information about nodes. And also, we need very high efficiency because simply we do not want a model to be very, very slow. And some of you may have noticed that I include the word topic in the paper's title. Why? Let's think about the topic model in natural language processing. In latent Dirichlet allocation, topics are defined by a collection of words, and a piece of document is defined by a collection of topics, which forms a three-layer hierarchy. Is that similar? Yes, when we look at the example I shown earlier, structures define social relations like dense clusters. Dense clusters define families, and a person's social network is defined by multiple social relations, like a social network consisting of families, followers, and employees. Therefore, we can see an analogy of the three-layer hierarchy between NLP topic models and graphs, which we will elaborate more later. So before going into details about our model, I would like to introduce an important preliminary called anonymous walks. Some of you may know random walks, right? And anonymous walks are simple variants that anonymize the exact identities about the nodes visited. For example, let's see the random walk 9, 18, 19, and 9. And 9 appears first and therefore will be mapped to 1 in the anonymous walk. 18 appears second, and etc. And the advantage of such representation is that all such kind of random walks, such as 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, will be mapped to the same anonymous walk. And therefore, it represents generally about the structures around a node, for example. And there are more theoretical analyses about anonymous walks. You can check the reference here. And using the notion of anonymous walks as structural patterns, we can formally set up the analogy between NLP topic models and graphs. We define structural patterns in our work, anonymous walks, to resemble words, and words define topics, and therefore structural patterns define social relations or any other types of relations, which we call structural topics in our work. And similarly, we define the set of walks starting from each node to resemble the notion of documents. And a node represents documents, which is defined by multiple relations. And similarly, we have similar parameters to learn. We have a word topic distribution and a document topic distribution. And similarly, in our topic model in networks, we have a walk topic distribution matrix and a node topic distribution matrix. Here we omit structural topics for brevity. And before we go into detailed methods about our model, we would like to first show some constraints on the input parameters, because not in all cases can we learn topic distributions. For example, when the words are very sparse, we definitely cannot learn topics like the figure shown at the bottom, right? And when we move the concept from text to graphs, it is important that we state these constraints clearly. And lemma 1 shows one such constraint. I will not go into the details, but just to show you some intuition, the lemma shows that the length of walks should be exceed a certain threshold, such that the topic model can be learned. To show you intuitively, at the bottom right corner of the slides shows an experimental results. The performance of our model is sensitive to the length of walks, which basically is intuitive that when we consider longer walks, we depict the structural information around a node more clearly and depict richer semantics, and therefore it leads to generally better performance. And then we would like to introduce a key component of our model called Graph Anchor LDA. What are anchors? Basically, anchors are important structural patterns rather than unimportant counterparts, because networks are combinatorial and basically many structural patterns will be generated, but most of them may be unnecessary or unimportant. And it is our task to pre-select these important structural patterns so as to, for example, improve efficiency, so as to reduce noise, and therefore facilitate the topic modeling. And we do so using non-negative matrix factorization and select the walks structural patterns with high coefficients, and so that we select these indicative and representative structural patterns. And therefore, after anchor selection, we feed them into topic learning. And for these, I will not go into details. If you are interested, you can check the paper yourself. And previously, I covered anchor selection and topic learning, and therefore I will proceed to structural topic aware GCNs, which fuses structural features and node features. And that contains several components like multi-view GCN, inspired by boosting and bagging. We would like to fuse the features from the two domains, node features and structural features together. And therefore we build a final fusing layer upon the outputs of two parallel GCNs, each one built upon node features and the other built upon structural features. And we combine them together using another layer. And we design a structural topic aware aggregator, which basically assigns higher weights to nodes whose topics are similar. And we use an unsupervised objective function, just like GraphSage, to learn the representations, learn the model. And here I would like to emphasize a little bit about the difference between our topic modeling on graphs and community detection. Basically, community detection assigns the same cluster to dense connections, but our structural topic model on graphs will assign similar representations to those who have similar local structures. Like you can see the figure on the right, although U and V are apparently not connected, we will assign them with similar structural topic representations because they have similar local structures, like two triangles, right? And then we will move on towards experimental evaluations. First, we would like to show an intuitive understanding, proof of concept visualization. We built a synthetic dataset, a synthetic graph using 3 types of structures, like the figure A here. There are three colors, blue, green, and red, which represents 3 different structures. And we learn the representations and project them onto a 2D space to visualize it. It can be shown that both our graph Anchor LDA and the GraphSTONE model in our paper are able to project nodes in a clear manner that clearly distincts different structures, while other models like MF is a community detection method, and GraphLSP is a previous work that also selects structural patterns for GCNs, but they are not able to clearly distinct structures, and therefore it shows that our model is basically conceptually correct about capturing structures. And we also visualize the effectiveness of anchor selection. On the left, we show the walk topic distribution that with anchors selected, and on the right, we show the distribution without anchors. It can be shown that generally, by using anchors, the distributions generated are sharper and amplifies certain structures that are indicative. For example, the star in the red topic, the star here and the star here. And for real-world dataset evaluations, we use these commonly used datasets like Cora, A-Minor, and PubMed, and compare against competitive baselines like GCN, GAT, GraphStage, etc. Right? And we evaluate our GraphSTONE model using 2 tasks: link reconstruction and node classification. As you can see, that GraphSTONE is competitive in link reconstruction, especially when no node features are present. It shows that the structural topic features learned by our topic models capture rich semantics about the network, and thus the GraphSTONE built on structural topic features alone is able to achieve very high accuracy, right? And similar trends can be observed in Vertex classification. It can be shown that GraphSTONE generally is competitive against the baselines, and especially when no node features are present. And we also do experiments about inductive classification. GraphSTONE also performs competitively against various baselines, which shows that our structural topic features actually generalize very well across different graphs, which is a very appealing property. And we also evaluate the efficiency. We can show that by using anchors, the efficiency is actually improved. And the GraphSTONE with anchors takes just a little bit more time than GCNs, which is also a very appealing property that it is highly scalable. So to sum up, we propose GraphSTONE to capture local structural information about nodes using topic models, which to the best of our knowledge is the first to use topic modeling to model network structures. And we design a graph Anchor LDA and multi-view GCNs to unify and express these 2 features. And we design extensive experiments to demonstrate that our model is competitive against baselines. So thank you. And if you want to know a little bit more about our work, you can check the addresses here. So thank you for your attention. And I would like to wish you all the best in the challenging year 2020 and wish you a good KDD 2020 experience. Thanks.